Yes.
What makes a successful fundraising call when it's not the candidate calling? Like it's his staff or her staff?
Not much. Give me an example. You talking about a presidential campaign?
No, for instance, I worked on Kirk Watson's senatorial campaign this past summer and a year ago, and I had to make calls on behalf of various candidates, not only his, but the fundraising consultant was reaching out to. And sometimes it was hard because you would push the benefits of the candidate or talking about why they're running, but it wasn't coming from them. It was coming from their ex-staff person.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I've been on campaigns where you do that drill, and geez, I always think there's some better use of your time, Katie, if you were full-time or whatever time you had to give to the campaign would have been better spent doing X, in my opinion, not to disparage the campaign you were working on, but I just know how the success rate of what you were trying to do is so small, and I'll bet the place where you found success, under the scenario that you've described, the one time it does kind of work that someone else can call is if you're calling for an incumbent, you're calling people that have already given to that incumbent or PACs that have already given to that incumbent, and they get the deal. You know what I mean? And they know the senator's too important to spend his time calling real people and asking them for money or whatever the drill was or case may have been in your situation. I don't know. I mean, when Watson ran, he quickly became the heir apparent, and he was, jokingly called senator all summer, by the lobby and folks around Austin. So he kind of had the mantle of an incumbent, which creates that rare case where you can try to raise money through a surrogate, but it's just really hard. It's tough. And you see a lot of these things where Mrs. Johnson will host an event at her place on Congress in Austin, and folks will always say, well, that's great, we're going to raise tons of money, she's going to call everybody. And I just laughed, like, no, she ain't going to call anybody. She's going to be the host, okay? And you're going to have to call everybody. And so it's tough. I mean, it's good to have a draw. It's good to call for an incumbent. It's good to be able to say you're going to have an event at Mrs. Johnson's or, whatever the equivalent would be on the Republican side at the Bushes or whatever. But, the truth of the matter is the best way money is raised is over the phone. So how was your success at doing that?
Well, I mean, sometimes you would just get hang-ups, to be honest with you.
Right.
I mean, some people are very nice, but 9 times out of 10 it was thank you so much, you've been very informative.
Right.
I'll get back to you, I'll look at the website.
Right, and when it takes an hour just to reach 10 people, you start to then, okay, and then you times that by 50 or 75% the pledge rate. It's like,
Well, the one good thing that the senator did was the consultant called him just this massive fundraising athlete because he would pick up the phone and instead of hanging up in between calls, would just press the button and dial again, and he would get in lots of calls in just 1 hour session, which was a lot more successful than other candidates that would take their time because it's not fun.
Yeah, it's not fun at all. It's funny, that you were doing that on his behalf because he was a legend at, at doing that very thing. And I know during his Attorney General's race in '02, I was sitting with the statewide candidate. John Sharp was running for lieutenant governor, and we could complete like 15, 20 calls an hour, which was, compared to some of my other clients, pretty absurd. And then somebody was talking about how Watson could do 10, 20 an hour too, and that he really worked it. And you know what that's an indication of, folks, is they care enough. The candidates to sit there and, oh, I don't want to do it. No. Well, do something else then. Don't run for office, And look, there are certainly scenarios, on the GOP side with their incumbents, they don't have to do nearly as much calling, in my opinion, or in my experience, as a Democratic candidate does. They're much better at committee fundraising than we are. So there are some inherent differences between the parties. And as I'm speaking to you as a Democratic consultant, I want to impress upon you the importance of calling. And it's interesting, the Republicans that are usually the most successful are the ones that do all their traditional things well, and then on top of it, they call. So that's the deal. Okay. Yes?
Is there a better time to call for the month and for the day, like time of day and time of month to call people?
I'd say usually the morning is the best time. Up till noon, you get your best rate. Monday's the worst day. Friday's the second worst. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is your prime time. And I try and tell my folks, have lunch delivered or whatever, and just sit there till 3 if you can stand it. you know, it's tough. You know, even a dedicated candidate, you know, 5-6 hours, man, it's hard after that. They're pretty gone. So, you know, if you can sit there in the chair from 9 to 2, let's say, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe be available Monday and Friday. Monday, know that your calls are going to be outgoing and not many connections, and the same with Fridays, okay? Just kind of know that. But the reason to keep doing it is, you know, if you're sitting there and you're dialing for dollars, you need to place 20 calls to get 8 completions and 3 callbacks. So if you think of it that way, well, every time I call 20 messages, I'm going to get 3 calls back. You kind of do Friday and Monday to set up those other few days in return calls and the like. Anybody else? Yeah?
Yes. I'm a potential donor.
Uh-huh.
Would you mind working your magic and selling me over the phone?
Right now?
Right now.
Well, I would just, you know, what am I running for?
U.S. Senator.
Oh. Senator, huh? Well, that's the last one I'd ever run for, but okay. Well, I would call and I would say, you know, Chris, how are you? Presuming I already know you?
Yes.
Okay. I'd say, Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
How's your family?
Oh, everything's going fine. The kids are in school.
How's your career coming along? You still in politics?
It's kind of shaky, but I'm hanging in there.
Okay. Well, I called you today to tell you I'm running for the U.S. Senate. And the reason I'm running for the U.S. Senate is I think we need to get out of Iraq. And I think it's very important. I think we're losing lives in Iraq. I think we're losing some of our best and our brightest. And I think it's an unjust war. I think we're there for oil, Chris. And I don't think that's what we need to be doing. Okay? And I care enough, Chris, that I'm going to run for the U.S. Senate and try and speak my voice about what I think is important for the future of our country. Will you help me with that, Chris?
Well, you know, I think I have a cousin that's in the Army right now, so that may be beneficial.
So, Chris, you know the importance of trying to change the makeup of the U.S. Senate and lead our country in a different direction. So, again, Chris, will you help me?
Yes, sir. Let me check my pocketbook.
Great. Now, at that point, I'm going to say, Chris, I have a very important June 30th fundraising deadline coming up. What's going to happen on June 30th is we're going to close down our report, and 15 days later, we're going to report how much money I have. And the more money I have, Chris, from good folks like you, then the more money I'm going to be able to raise later on, because the reporters and all the political smart people will say that Chris is an important, viable, good candidate. Okay? Or that I'm a good candidate. Whoop, I slipped up there. That I'm a good candidate because I've raised this money. So, Chris, can you help me in that endeavor to raise $100 by June 30th?
Maybe 200.
And then I'd say, Chris, I can't help you enough. If there's anyone else like you that you know of, here's my email. Please send it along. And then I'd say, Chris, I have all your information in front of me. Can I just check to make sure this is right? Blah, 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 blah. Chris says, yeah, it's right. And I say, Chris, I can't tell you how important your help will be in letting us have a greater voice to make a change in politics, a change for the better. And Chris, thank you very much. That's it. But that's the gist of it. And too many times it's, you know, here's what I hear. They get on the phone and they're nervous because I'm asking somebody for money, and they say, you know, I'm running as a Democrat because I'm pro-education, you know, and I think the government needs to do more, and you know, I think we need to fix health care, and you know, that's why I'm running, and you know, will you give me some money? And then I have a deadline coming up, and it's June 30th, and you know, I really need to try and raise some money because I got to buy some signs or whatever, and you know, I hate calling you, Chris, because it makes me uncomfortable, but my consultant's sitting here and he says I got to do it, and I stupidly decided to pay him, so I guess I'm going to listen to him. I mean, you hear all kinds of crazy stuff. And so that's just like off the wall and not what you do. It's, you know, it's whatever, you know, James Eldreddy just walked in, who is the most successful Democratic consultant in Texas, and he's going to sit here and talk to you about media, and I'm sure somewhere along the lines he's going to say something about when you communicate through the media, you're trying to communicate as if you're really having a conversation with that person, okay? And so when you're on the phone, obviously, you're really having a one-on-one conversation.